Okay, here we go. We are recording. This is terrible. Let me actually share my screen. Okay, so screen one, share it, and let me start the presentation. Okay, so um, can you guys see all that? What I'm doing here? Can you guys
Yeah.
see what should be on the first page?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. Binding.pry. What is it, and why do we love it? I'm Jason, your friendly cohort ghost, and let's go. So, binding.pry. We're going to talk about what it is, why you're going to want to use pry. Um, just kind of a little quick list of all the things we're going to go through slide by slide. But first of all, what is pry? Pry is a REPL. You guys know what REPL is? I mean, at this point, you probably have run across the term. I think in the first mile. But does anybody remember what that means? So it's a read, evaluate, print, loop. IRB is a REPL, and basically it's an interactive terminal environment that allows you to interact with the program, the variables, the methods, and things like that. And just about every programming language is going to have a REPL. Some of your compiled programming languages, it's a little bit different because it has to be done before it's compiled. But just know that it's a tool that's included with most program languages. It stands for read, evaluate, print, and loop. You'll probably run into it again. Um, and what does it do? It helps us debug. Debugging, as I'm sure you guys already know, is an important concept. Binding.pry is a great introduction to debugging, and as a matter of fact, it's a tool that um, it comes in very handy now in your early phases of learning, um, where you have uh, real simple problems that you're trying to solve, and then you're going to use it all the way through into your more advanced programs, Sinatra, Rails, all these things that are built on Ruby. Binding.pry is there and is your buddy. Um, let's see, did it work? Okay. And it is, lastly, it's a snapshot in context into our code. Now I'll go a little bit more into what that means, but essentially it encapsulates a section of your code and allows you to get inside of it and like just peek around, take a look. So how do we get binding.pry? So we actually, Jesse was talking about classes earlier. Binding itself is actually a class, and um, it's a built-in class in Ruby. And so uppercase indicates binding, and then when you use it, you're using lowercase, and you're doing the lowercase here, and that's actually a method within the binding class. It's a little confusing. It's a whole lot. It's not really that necessary. It's just kind of some groundwork. But binding is a built-in class, and what it does is when you use it, it basically packages up everything in the context that you use it in, within the scope that you're using it in, and puts it in a little box so that you can access it. All the variables, all the methods, everything that's involved with that. So um, when you use binding and combine with the pry gem, it gives you the chance to look inside your code. Pry itself is a gem. And how do we install a gem? Any of you, any guys remember how to install a gem? No? Anybody?
They had us do it when we were setting up our environment.
No. You're, so it's real simple. It's just gem install pry. Get used to this syntax right here, gem install. That's um, something that later you're going to be expected to know, especially as you get to the end of your boot camp and you're out in the workforce. They're going to expect you to know how to install stuff, and you're going to run into especially like you guys are what first miles over this weekend, and another week or two you'll be working on your projects, and when you start making your projects, you're going to be putting in things that the school's not providing. So I definitely recommend like reviewing those things if you have free time um, between now and your project. But you do gem install pry, and then how do you access that gem within your application? Well, it's real simple. At the beginning of your program, you do this little handy guy right here, require pry. This is another thing you're going to get real familiar with before the end of your boot camp. Um, there's going to be some form of this in almost everything you do, whether it's in Rails, Ruby on the back end, or if you're doing like your JavaScript stuff and you're into React Redux on the front end, you're going to be doing something similar. The syntax gets a little different for each language, but they just get used to the idea that you will install something and then you'll require it within your program, and that's how you access it within your program. And then how do you access it? Well, you place it inside your program. It's that simple. So say I have this program method here. I have this program and I have this little method, and it takes in a couple of arguments and lets me use those variables inside. And if I want to use binding.pry, so for example, here we have a problem where if I were to run this would be wrong, right? So because this is pointing in the wrong direction. So it's actually, if the number is less than 50, it's going to take me into the greater than, and that's going to be a problem. So say I don't know what the problem is, right? I want to figure it out. I can stick a binding.pry in, just type it in like that. And when it evaluates your code, if it hits a binding.pry, it kicks you into one of these. And this is what binding.pry looks like. It shows you a section of the code that it's from, the scope. So like remember I said binding boxes up your scope into one little package, right? It puts it in a box. That's this right here. This is my whole scope from the beginning to the end of that method. And anything that's accessible inside of that method is now accessible inside of this little terminal here, this REPL, right? So I could type in numbers and it will tell me what the variable numbers is set to. If I typed in X or words, it would do that. And so that's really like that's my main bread and butter with this is I want to get inside of my working code, right? Like you can look at your code and you can say, well, if this happens, it does this. If this happens, it does that. But um, to really get in there and see what your variables equal at that exact moment is an extremely useful tool. Um, and in this case, when I pull up the live code, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But in this case, you could put it in a number of places. You could put it here. You could put it before your if statement. You could put it inside of the method that it's calling, right? To see if it's actually making it down into that method. Um, and it's really about what are you trying to figure out? What are you trying to ascertain? Are you trying to figure out what a variable is? Are you trying to figure out where a variable's at? Where your code leads you? Um, and I know a lot of this probably seems pretty abstract right now, but we'll get into some more stuff when we pull up the live code. And then how to exit, it's really simple. Like you literally just type exit, and then it will evaluate the rest of the code. So these are all puts that happened after the binding. So it pauses, lets you look around. When you're done, you hit exit. It finishes the program and then returns you back to your terminal. Any questions on that? I'm going to jump over to live code here and show you guys some actually like in use, not just static screenshots, but
Yeah, so you said you can access anything within the scope. Is that even that's even like if I were to put binding.pry at the very start of my method, I would be able to access like a new variable that's declared below that binding.pry within the scope?
so that's actually a really good question. Let me show you that. We'll just do it right here. So binding.pry, and we have required. Okay, so I always forget to save. So once I run the program, and it puts me into a binding. Can you guys see that text? Okay, is the font size okay?
Yeah, that's good. Well,
Great.
good for me.
All right. I try to walk the line between visible and fitting in the window. So when your program is evaluated, there's two phases to it. The first phase is it goes through and it says, okay, oh, look, it's gonna we got a program, we got a method. Okay, we're gonna make space for the method, and then we're gonna go through. Let me show you on this. So it's gonna go through your whole program here, right? It's gonna start at the very prop, require pry. All right. Okay, y equals this. Okay, where is it? Now it's gonna get to here. It's gonna say, um, oh, here's a method called program method. Let me put space for that and keep going. Oh, here's another method called greater than, and then here's another method called less than. But it won't evaluate actually like fill that memory space until it actually goes through it. So when we go into our method here now, and our binding.pry is above our declaration, when I go here, x equals nil. X has no value, but x exists, right? Like if I tried to do something else, like dog, right? Oh, we got an error because there's no method and there's no variable in here called dog. It's not. It just doesn't exist. But when we get to this point, it is already so it's gone into the method, and I'm pointing with my finger. So it's gone into the method here, right? And before it actually runs this code, it goes and it looks at it and it says, "Oh, look, we're declaring a variable here. Set aside the space in my mind for this variable called x, and we'll come back later and figure out what actually x means, right?" And so when we come back and we start running line by line, we run binding.pry, it knows there's a variable called x, but it doesn't know that it has a name or that it has a definition yet, right? So if I wanted to define x, I would have to actually type in x equals and then whatever string, or and this is actually a really cool thing. I was gonna leave this in the like at the end, like a few little advanced tricks, but you could type play -L for line and then the line of x. Now my x has a value, right? But that was actually a really insightful question, and that has to do with just the way that Ruby is loaded into memory and the way the programs are executed, and it's actually really similar to JavaScript. So that's something that you'll see a lot more as you go forward. But yeah, we're now in our binding pry, and it shows us, first thing it shows us is where we're at, right? Well, we're in our here's our path. We're in program.rb, and we're on line 10, and then it gives you the scope. So the scope is the object. Our object is really. Our object is our whole program, right? So it tells us scope, and then it gives us our actual code. So now it says, hey, look, right here. This is where you did it, man. Right here. This is where you put the binding pry. This is all stuff that comes after it. And now here's your REPL. So it's going to read what I put here, evaluate it, print it, and then loop it around and come back again. So if I wanted to put numbers, if I wanted to set numbers equal to something else, I could. I could even set it to a string. But this is all in this REPL. So once I exit this, it's going to go through and it's going to evaluate the rest of this program and then end. So if I have so we have x already is one thing. Well, now x is something, but when we run it, it's going to hit this point here and it's going to redefine x, because after we exit, it's going to finish and comparison of string with 50. What? Oh, okay. So I changed. We were here, right? I changed numbers from a number to a string, and then tried to compare it, and I got an error. All right. I think I just complicated everything. Any questions?
I did have a so far we've only seen sort of examples where there's one binding.pry sequentially, like you had placed one in the if or one in the else. are you able to have multiple lines of binding.pry, and then when you hit exit, it will just skip to the next binding.pry for
Most
evaluation again?
most definitely. So we'll put them everywhere. We'll put them here, put them here, put them down in these other methods that I call, right? And just for the heck of it, we'll put it out here, right? So now, when we run the program, let me make this big so we can see it. So the first binding.pry we hit is the one right before we invoke the program, right? Because that's the first one that's outside of a method, right? All these other ones are inside of the program method or inside of these other methods. So we hit that one first, but when we exit it, now we're into another one. Now this one is line 10. Now that's the one that we were just working with a little bit ago. So now, what do we expect to see here? 70. And I never fixed this, so we know that that's going to send us to the wrong place. So this is actually going to send us to the greater than. So we should see another pry. Exit. Oh, yeah, see, we're in the else. So we're in this one. And then it's going to send us. And every time we exit, it evaluates code till it hits the next binding pry, right? So now this one is inside of the less than. And then that should be the last one. And evaluates the rest of the program and go. So yeah, you can have as many binding.pries as you want, and it'll keep hitting them. So
is there a way to just have one binding.pry and just have it iterate like line by line?
Let's see here. Let's see if play lets us do like a line by line play. So it looks like there are quite a few ways you can play. So right here, I think this is probably what you were looking at. It's like to play it line by line. You can play specific lines. You can play lines, give us a specific input or an output. Like I think this one's probably closest to what you're talking about, or maybe even this one. I don't know how you would just like. So what you're saying is like if I'm in this thing, if I wanted to just, I wonder if I could just type in play. Nope. Okay. So yeah, so that's something I've never messed with, to be honest with you.
I do know. I just wanted to venture one tip that
Sure.
I always end up. I feel like I put it towards the bottom, and from that point, once it sort of goes through and evaluates most of the method, you can actually copy any of the variables from up above, paste it, get the return values, or you can copy any comparator expressions, and it will return you true, false. You can shove quite a bit in the binding.pry evaluator, and it will kind of spit out a lot of the logic, which it's not line by line, but it does help a lot.
Yeah. So pry is a pretty fancy thing. I gotta get out of it. What the heck? There we go. See, I was within a pry, within a pry, within a pry there. All right. Let me get out of those. And I would tell you one thing about binding.pries is you'll forget about them, and then you'll be running your program and think you got them all out, and then you'll hit a binding.pry. And so those are fun. I've been sitting at staring at my front end, doing nothing, just spinning, spinning, and spinning. Forgot that I had a binding.pry in the back end, and that was a bit embarrassing. Let's see. Any other questions?
I had one actually about say if you put a binding.pry in a loop that iterates like 200 times or something.
Okay.
I think when you hit exit, it will go to the next iteration of that loop, basically until it finishes whatever the expression is. Is there a way to like skip out of the remaining of a loop?
Well, let's see. That's a good question. Let's see here. If you're running a loop, you want to just skip out of the loop. I don't think so. Because when your binding.pry is going to be, let's see.
Maybe if you did like play -L and then a line that's after the loop, or would that just bring you back into the loop once it's done with that?
Yeah, I think it would just take you back in the loop because your scope. So we have a loop, right? And let me just mess that all up, and then x plus plus, right? And then binding.pry. Let's see if that'll even work. And just call. What did I call it? Pry loop. Oh, shoot, right. Okay. X. And why is that not there? Equals 0. All right, here we go. We're in a loop. X. Now when we exit, undefined method. Okay. And that's what happens when you work with too many languages at once. Just 2 plus 1. Where's that other binding pry? Down here. All right, let's see how that goes. All right. So
I think that might have to be x plus equals 1 because I think that just reassigns
right.
1.
X. Yeah, you're right. And see, I'm trying to I'm trying to fix it within that code. All right, and so it's going to loop through every time. Actually, that's going to be. Let's do this. X. What did I say? 110. There we go.
Oh, interesting. So you just set the variable so it satisfied the while loop and then it exited fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, smart. I never thought of that.
Because you'd be stuck.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. So now if we exit, X is 2. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second, please. Okay, great. All right, so X equals 3, and then we exit again. So now we're incrementing through our X, and let's see here. There was that one. I can't see. Play dash help. See if we can't find that. Maybe that. What line is that? 26. So play dash E 26. Let's see what happens. No, that didn't work. Oh, wait. Okay. So no, that does not work. And why am I stuck now? All right. So exit. and you're kind of just forced to loop through manually unless you wanted to redefine x. Um, Honestly, like those real advanced things, I haven't done a whole lot of playing with, just because I
I
haven't.
think the solution that you came up with of setting X to whatever satisfy that works perfectly. It kind of makes sense that it wouldn't work another way, because if you wanted to iterate through the whole loop,
Right, you just move binding.pry out of it.
yeah.
And honestly, another way I could have done that is I could have done edit, right, and it opens Vim, but I don't know if anybody uses Vim. It's gross and terrible. It shouldn't be allowed on people's computers. Um,
Can you do like 100 times exit?
Oh, you mean like this?
Or I mean, however it would say it, because I know like if you want to do a loop 100 times or something, you just say like the number 100 and the word times do.
That you know what? That looked like it worked. Let's now I'm curious. I want to see something here. Where's it at? Pry loop, and let's clean up the spacing just because that bothers me. And then puts it worked. This is why my code always sucks, because I have the worst keyboard skills on earth. All right, so let's see. And so we're in it. No.
Interesting.
That what did that even do? So now I wonder what that does. It just kicks it right out. Well, let's look. Exit dash help. Options. Just not exit pop use binding. Use the determine program flow. Well, that was extremely clearly worded. Alias is quit. So, what does pry this do? It's just gonna set the string, and it's just, oh, okay. It just kept me in the same pry. It didn't do actually anything. Okay, so I don't know why this works, but apparently if you put something in parentheses there, it just, oops. See if it does it with nothing. No. I think it's time for a new keyboard. Yep. Okay. So if you do that, it just kicks you out of the whole loop. So that's, if you want to exit the whole program, you could do that, but it won't evaluate the rest of your code, right? So when you're running your pry, if you do exit like that, it will continue evaluating code until your code is done. And we can sit there and do that 1,000 times. Or you could do that, and it actually will exit you out of the entire program. And I imagine there's a use case for either or. There are times when I've hit keystrokes in my terminal that I have no idea what I hit, because I have like your fingers are too fat for this phone sort of situation, and so that's useful. Anything else?
It's sort of a related one, but are there probably not binding.pry obviously, but something for JavaScript that's pretty native? Like this seems to be integrated into Ruby very well with not really installing much of anything.
Yes, actually, JavaScript has a debugger, and you put that in your JavaScript code, and when it hits that line, it will open a terminal. So
I can look this up on my own time too.
Yeah,
I was just
I don't
curious.
have anything like handily queued up right now.
Yep.
But yeah, essentially in JavaScript, just like binding.pry, you just set it in there, debugger, and it'll open up a REPL, and that's built into your Chrome tools too. So like in Chrome, actually, I can show you this. Do an terminal. Let's see. Like we'll go to whatever. We'll do this, and then so in your Chrome tools, right? You can go and inspect your JavaScript, and you can put a little breakpoint. Like just by doing that, you click that, and that's the same thing as putting debugger, and it'll break your program and bring you to this like, hey, this is a breakpoint here. But another really cool thing about VS Code is the VS Code has a similar thing, where you click that, and it runs into it, and it'll treat it as a breakpoint. Let's see if it does it in Ruby. Because I honestly did this one time. I clicked this once on accident, and I was like, why is my program freezing on that one point? And no, it was a JavaScript program though. So yeah, I was doing JavaScript and I had accidentally clicked this, and when it came through on my single page application to this line of code, it freaking, hey, here's a breakpoint, and I spent like 3 hours trying to figure out what was wrong with this line of code right here. Like, why is this red? Why is it a breakpoint? And then it was just because I accidentally clicked the dang. So there's a lot of little gotchas that you could run into. But so there's a lot of built-in, like, yeah, there's a lot of built-in debugging functions. But in JavaScript, just debugger, and that's it. And then there's other ones as you get into Rails. There's bybug, binding.pry, bybug, console.log, and debugger are my main tools for debugging. And like over the course of the bootcamp, you'll run into each one of those. I think console.log will be the next one that you run into with any sort of regularity. And that's a pretty neat thing. But instead of console.log, instead of throwing you into like this little terminal environment here, it's like puts. It just whatever. It's just a puts, yeah, but it's just in a different language. Yeah, debuggers are the best. I mean, I do kind of a debugging centric, like a broken code centric kind of style of programming. So like, I require the errors. I kind of like solve the errors. Like I just, oh, okay, well, I know I want to do this, so let me make a method called this, and then let me just, oh, look, it's an error and it's not doing what I want. I mean, now it's just kind of work backwards from there. So like all the applications I've written, like just minimal design, and then I can't stress enough like how much like just doing it is the key to learning it, and like getting the errors, solving the errors. But that brings me to actually something I call Uncle Matt's maxim. This is huge. Uncle Matt, he's my best friend and mentor. I've known him since high school, and he's been an industry professional for a long time. And he says, if you think you understand the concepts and you think your code is right and it's still not working, you have a spelling or syntax error. And I kid you not, he has said this to me so much in the last 2 years. I hear his voice in my head. And so I want you to hear my voice, right? Because you don't know his voice. If you're staring at your code and you've been looking at it for like an hour or two, and you're like, man, this should work. I swear I understand the concepts. I swear I'm doing this right. I really don't understand why this isn't working. At that point, you probably have a spelling and a syntax error. And that's the point. Like, honestly, I can't tell you how many times with like cohort mates, like hey man, can you look at my code? Yeah, sure, no problem, dude. And we would pull it up, and within the first 2 seconds, oh man, dude, I see it right there. You got an extra period, or you forgot to you misspelled understand, or you know what I mean. So it might seem it's deceptively simple. So it really, I cannot stress enough. If you are grinding and grinding and grinding, and you're like, I don't understand why this is not working. It should be working. I've binding.pry my eyes out, and it's still not working. You probably got a spelling or a syntax error, and that's I found that to be sadly remarkably true, and that's why my code is broken most of the time, because I'm always misspelling. So, and then just a summary. It's an excellent debugging tool. You're going to use it all the way from plain old Ruby all the way through Sinatra and Rails. It is definitely the gateway drug of debuggers. And once you get a taste of it, you're going to want more. And it's much cooler than IRB. So, any more questions? Anyone?
I think I'm good on that. I would be curious if you have time to just hear like a high level overview of like where kind of what after first mile looks like into the first project, and then sort of like what the whole first project felt like for you. That's off topic though, so if you don't have time, that's fine.
No, that's fine. Let me yeah, I still got some time before I gotta pick up the kiddo from school. Let me stop this recording now.